To many, World War II has been the most devastating war in human history. It had been a global military conflict that caused the loss of millions of lives, as well as material destruction. The war began in Europe in September of 1939 and ended May 8, 1945. This day was marked by the British government as VE Day. The outcome of this war left a new world order dominated by the US and the Soviet Union. Millions of people were slaughtered, about 30 million to be exact, of which 6 million were Jewish. Who was behind this slaughter of millions of Jews and other human beings, you may ask? Adolf Hitler. The simple mention of his name conjures up memories of total war, death, and destruction, and always the death of millions of Jews and other undesirables in the Holocaust. Adolf Hitler was born in Austria on April 20, 1889. He was the son of a minor customs official and a peasant girl. He had a love for reading, although he never completed high school and was rejected by the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna due to his lack of talent. Through reading, he developed his anti-democratic and anti-Jewish beliefs, and admiration for the outstanding individual and contempt for the masses. By volunteering for service in the army during World War I, he proved himself as a dedicated and courageous soldier. He was given a medal for bravery, but never promoted beyond private first. In September 1919, Hitler joined the Nationalist German Workers' Party, which later changed its name to the Nazi Party. While spending time in prison for trying to overthrow the government, Adolf Hitler wrote his famous book, Mein Kampf, in which he describes many problems and where he states that the Jewish and the Communists were responsible for those problems. Since Hitler didn't agree with paying the debt for World War I and wanted to become the leader of Germany, he took advantage of the Great Depression of 1929 and explained it as a Jewish communist plot and said that the Jews and the Communists were the causes of Germany's defeat in World War I. He assured the people of Germany that he was going to get rid of the Jews and Communists and reunite the German-speaking parts of Europe. Slowly, the Nazi Party began looking toward the rising politician Adolf Hitler and the growing Nazi movement as the vehicle to hitch themselves to. He became the leader by using his great speaking ability. After he came into power, the Nazi Party took control over every aspect of everyday life. Hitler ordered the creation of a special police force to make sure that all opponents would be eliminated. It was called the Gestapo. He also gave orders to set up a special force which would be used to transport and take care of all political prisoners and people thought to be inferior. Hitler offered the Germans protection from Marxism and fought communism with its own weapons. For this, Germans gave him a complete dictatorship and showed that they had faith in him. Hitler was already looking at how he could carry his movement to the rest of Germany. By 1932, the Nazi Party was the strongest party in Germany. Hitler used widespread propaganda of the Versailles Treaty, the November criminals, and the Marxists and the Jews, who were responsible for all Germans' domestic problems, to brainwash and manipulate the nation into accepting his theory of a perfect Aryan race, which was his dream of creating a perfect world of one race which he considered pure. He made it clear to the world that Germans had clear racial superiority to the rest of the world and the right to dominate all nations. When Hitler became Chancellor and eventually took over totally, the first thing he did was to take away the Jewish right to vote. Soon they were not even allowed to marry with a pure German. They could not hold positions such as teachers, doctors, lawyers, and so on. Many Jews only then realized that he was serious, and many fled Germany. In 1935, the Nuremberg Laws were enacted to deny Jewish Germans of their citizenship. This ultimately led Hitler to carry out his final solution, in which he hoped to fully exterminate the Jewish race from all of Europe. Nazi Germany established about 20,000 camps to imprison its millions of victims that Hitler believed to be inferior. These camps were used for a range of purposes, including forced labor camps, transit camps which served as temporary way stations, and killing centers built primarily or exclusively for mass murder. From its rise to power in 1933, the Nazi regime built a series of detention facilities to imprison and eliminate so-called enemies of the state. Most prisoners in the early concentration camps were German communists, Jews, socialists, social democrats, gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, and persons accused of asocial or social behavior. These facilities were called concentration camps because those imprisoned were physically concentrated into one location.
Why did so many Germans follow Hitler? When he took power, the economy was basically non-existent. Many looked for answers and hope. Hitler was their answer. He promised to rebuild the glorious Germany of the past. First, he started to build up the Wehrmacht. Germany was not allowed to have more than 100,000 men, but Hitler broke the treaty and gave orders to increase that number. Factories started putting out weapons and people now had jobs. He maneuvered perfectly between the mutual French and British suspicion of the other and their conflicting interests. He knew just how far and when to push each nation to its limit. His sense of timing was superb with Great Britain and France. His first successful move, Hitler renounced the Versailles Treaty in 1935. The British were busy with their empire and rebuilding their economy, letting the French deal with Europe. Hitler pushed France and Great Britain to the brink, one which they were desperate to avoid. Now Hitler honestly believed that the French and the British would never move against him, and he set his eyes on a new victim, Poland. Invading Poland on September 1, 1939, he and his close advisors were very surprised and dismayed to find that the French and the British had declared war on Germany. However, through the enterprise and the drive of several young and very driven generals, the military kept moving to cut off the Allies in Belgium before Hitler could do any more damage to the war effort in France. The Holocaust lasted for 12 years until 1945. Starting as early as 1944, the Allies were advancing on the Germans, and they began taking over their camps. In July 1944, Majdanek, a camp in Poland, was liberated by the Soviets. This was followed by many more liberations and takeovers as the Americans and other allies slowly removed Hitler from power. In January 1945, Auschwitz was liberated. This was the biggest camp in Nazi territory, and it was also where the most deaths occurred. The liberation of this camp was a major milestone in the end of the Holocaust. Finally, Hitler's greatest strengths, his unerring drive, focus, and his ability to take risks would leave him. Oddly enough, he was hyper-conservative in wartime and would often break down during offensives. This would end his spectacular string of successes and ultimately bring the fires of ruin and reckoning to the Reichstag itself in May 1945. Hitler committed suicide in his bunker on April 30, 1945, along with his new wife, Eva Braun. This left the hierarchy of Hitler's regime to take the blame, and this they did. Many high-ranking members of the Nazi Party were sentenced to hang at the Nuremberg trials in 1946. All of these sentences were carried out for the exception of Hermann Göring, who chose to commit suicide in his jail cell using cyanide, only hours before he was due to be executed. Those members of the Nazi Party who escaped persecution did so largely by fleeing to South America. The International War Crimes Tribunal spent many hours and lots of money trying to find these men. However, most were never found. In this way, Hitler had others do the dirty work and take the fall for him until the end.